Hello, hi. This is your Truly Clarice T. And today is the 19th of December 2024, and it's a Thursday. For today's video, I want to start with some terminologies of familiar words, especially for those who read often, like students. They have no choice. They have to read and scan pages. Some books have them and some don't. So I want to start with prologue, a separate introductory section of a literary or musical work. Use it in a sentence. This idea is outlined in the prologue. So bookworms will have no problem um, defining it, even without actual words. They would know what it means. The synonym is preface by the author. So the short of it, it's the introduction of the book by the author. So if you are not the author, that is foreword. So the heading will read foreword. It's the introduction of the book by another person, usually a person with authority over the subject matter or over the industry, the publication and publishing industry. So they are the respected voices. Their opinions matter. And another terminology is epilogue, a section or a speech at the end of a book or play that serves as a comment or conclusion to what has happened. So after reading the whole book, the readers will, the last things that the readers will read will be the epilogue. So somehow it's also important, both the prologue and the epilogue. And epilogue is written by the author. So if one is not the author, one should not place that term that is associated with the prerogatives of the author. So it doesn't matter who the publishers or the publishing company is, the prologue and the epilogue, they are some sort of privilege of the authors. So my name is Clarissa Talaga Garcia, though I also go by my stage name, Clarice T, in the music industry. So I'm in the process of publishing the first series of young adult fiction, which I had written several years ago, self-published actually. So nowadays, it's not as derogatory term. But back then, yeah, it felt as if I was publishing it because there was no publishing company who deemed me as trustworthy or a bankable, someone who can truly write and can, provide somewhat, a commercial success. Now I am just so glad that I had self-published these three novels, and in order to create different persona, I had used the combination of my name and those of my daughters. So this time around, I will be offering Hello Love series globally through Amazon Kindle. Just like my music, I am hoping and praying, that it will be a runaway success as well. What with the time change from the time I've written it, it originally intended for young adult fiction, but because times have changed and as I watch the young adult genre now, both in the movies and on television, the books that I have read, I would be misplaced. So I am reclassifying it now for young teens novelettes. So I dare not, um, in the international stage, I dare. And so for the nth time, I have to re-record everything um, due to several problems arising. But it doesn't matter. I think it is helping me because the more I articulate on the things that are needed to be said, like um, how it's going to be when the process would involve me being interviewed, whether in a formal venue or even informally as I promote my books. I hope to put an order into my chaotic thoughts in order to cut to the chase and just say what are needed to be said. So before I am able to legally claim my published works, just like my heroine Veronica in my novel Veronica Who, I had to find my real identification, which had been lost in a series of wrong personal information. By the way, the books that I am going to publish to a greater audience, to a greater market or readers, one thing will be made clear, that English is not my native tongue and it's not my first language. Ordinary English speakers, native English speakers like the Americans, they would have faster way of expressing themselves, and the comprehension would be, in a snap of the fingers. But with me, it's like looking at the tired, old, familiar things with new perspective. The way I was writing back then, how I had constructed the thoughts. It's been said that the vehicles of our thoughts are the words that we're going to use and how we construct them, how we use them, and that's the basis of copyright. It should be originally from our thoughts, and to prove that we are the actual author and that we have the right to those set of words that had been arranged to carry a message or to tell a story. That is the legal rights that are given to authors. So obviously these are the things that will be in my prologue. But the things that I'm going to say now, that I will share, will be part of the introduction that I would write to those whom I would invite to read my book and say like a paragraph or a line or two, just for them to get to know me as the author, or to say, to gauge my work. I am opening up myself, how they would evaluate these works, fiction, and somehow, if they still want to get to know me, that is the way that is the way to move forward. So just like the other lead characters in my book, the novelette Veronica Who, the names that the readers will read will be Ellen, Andrew, and Keith. I had Keith spelled Kees. I had thought of those names by listening to my innermost thoughts. Although in the case of Keith, my good friend Mildred Lau had supplied the Dutch name. She still lives in the Netherlands to this day. That's why, and she has her family has also grown. Hi Mildred, I dread. Within the more than 20 years of record consolidation, which had encountered so many hits and misses, and it was so frustrating because the trouble that I had taken originally, like during the time that I was researching the facts
of a fiction because I want to be as clarified. I want to provide clarity in what aspect is my book fictional and the things that are not fictional and based on the real system here in the Philippines. Remember, this is prelude to the advent of the internet technology. So we only get to know, and somehow for those of us who do not have the entitlements and privilege to travel abroad, we can do so through the books that we read. So I wanted to provide, the basic information about our lifestyle and how it had been with us here in the Philippines. So after all the trouble that I had gotten into, the question about my valid ownership to the set of words known as, those novelettes, those novels that that were published, came to the attention of the public through a very painstaking process of regulation, compliance, and the highs and lows and the depletion of resources that I had to replenish through odd jobs where, could get too much for a day, that I had to step back and I had to rest and I had to, be, to rest because I was exhausted. So those were the moments when really some thoughts would come over, like, is this worth it? I mean, what other point of interest will another person have in my novels? Those things that I asked. What is the point of interest? Is it monetary? Is it recognition? Why? So many whys. And then when I couldn't get the answers to the why, I just accepted that probably the period of time was not right for me to get the answers to my whys, and somehow I had to lean on the greater source of strength to be able to move on. So in my years of experience that had begun as my mother's apprentice at age 21, and I'm not in my 20s now and 30s, so the extensive experience came to the rescue because I came to the conclusion that I could only move forward if I had created a company, a business company that will take the cudgel for the person of interest. So the administrative management of the public persona, as well as providing adequate justification to formally assert for the civil rights of the person of interest whose identification was being challenged in various systems, locally and domestically. So after that, a positive action took the edge off. The helplessness. I was motivated, and in doing so, I was able to discover things that would not have that I could not have learned any other way had the journey been as calm and as easy. I would not have the skill set that would be my source of confidence to offer my services to other businesses and companies. Might as well, like, if I am already doing it for me, as problematic as I am, why not do it for another client, right? For instance, there is a difference between the legal requirements to exist as a natural or real person versus the juridical and the corporate entity, being both classification based on reality, that they're real and not just a figment of a sick imagination or a product of a delusional mind. Things being equal and real, they have the distinction and they have its advantages and disadvantages. The mother, being the late Learning Menjola talaga, had been a retired public school teacher and a business person. So this identification was recognized by her own rights regardless of who her husband had been. Funny about it is that the set of friends of my parents, they have different set of friends. Of course, they had common friends, but in doing business or in working, in pursuing livelihood, they had no common friends that actively are part of each other's network. So my mother had been known as her own person. Now that same principle behind accurate identification, where her uninterrupted, where her continuous specific civil right to be part of the mainstream society, like for her to practice her God-given volition, her, her opinions and prerogatives in how she would raise her kids, the two of us, Jerry and me, to live a normal and ordinary life bound by obedience to the same set of rules and law that others are also expected to obey, or just like my mother during those times when the civil and criminal codes had been thrown at her, against her right and against her interest, whenever her judgment call had been questioned because they supposedly adversely affected, like my father, like the company or another individual. And oftentimes it had happened in the course of her lifetime, so many times that it had happened. I was in the process, I was initiated by the due process because I was by her side. So there was clarity in the issues being raised, like my mother had been given a chance to explain herself, and that no resolution had taken place without her saying her piece, without exhausting the rights being given to all the parties concerned, to meet halfway and to be able to thresh out any grievance that might not have been given proper day in court during the preliminary, or be attended to before the conflict became a complaint. So through those experiences, I learned not to take due diligence for granted, and prudence became my middle name, in a manner of speaking. So how do I practice prudence? By explaining the private joke that I truly don't believe that my name had ceased to be Clarissa and it became Prudence. There was a time that the private joke that I thought was source of laughter now would be forgotten tomorrow had become actually a clinical diagnosis. And it had taken all my resources to correct the impression. Now, prudence is being practiced because the danger areas or the danger zones can be in the literary translation or interpretation of my words. That's why when I said prudence became my middle name, it's not an episode of schizophrenia or dual, what do you call that? Anyway, it's a personal joke. Me having to belabor that personal joke. It goes to show that 20 years of identification problems, consolidation, had not been a joke. I am risking the cool reputation of being a nerd by these explanations gladly. So that, you know, I call into account the actions taken by the company responsible for organizing live events. We used to be known as Talaga Information and Business Consultancy, or TIBC, which later on, the DTI, when I had applied it, it had been changed to Clarissa T. Garcia Business Consultancy Services. That although I'm signatory and it's my words being read by the recipients, said letters, amongst other correspondence or communication, like the business proposal, proposition letter, sponsorship letter, via my authorized representatives, or ordinarily by courier. But if the persons had been a middleman, it would assume another kind of relationship, right? The liaison services of another person, the reason why I would regard him or her as liaison was the same reason that we would be found discussing certain topics for the shared goal, which is the welfare of the company. And so therefore, it doesn't necessarily mean that Clarissa, the daughter of, the niece of, the sister of, the wife of, the cousin of, the secret lover of, the dishonest businesswoman, the deranged, the delusional, the neighbor of, the enemy of, the accused enemy of. I had encountered so many labels actually as the person of interest in the course of consolidating my record. Having to prove that I was not that person did not happen automatically. Evaluation period had taken time, but I am just so glad that I was able, the things that had find resolution, those things that had been resolved, came only by way of clarity. That much is true. That the only way the conflict had been resolved was when we had exchanged personal knowledge directly, and that our intent had been open for scrutiny. Like, I want you to know that your letter, your business letter had not been responded to because we regard you as such and such. So with that actual direct knowledge, I am able to do something about it. But if it's not only in the shadowy figure of imagination and speculation, things would not have helped anyone. So this company had been responsible for the claims of ownership and self-representation, be it in the public forum or in legal forum as a client of a law practitioner or lawyer. As a juridical entity, some ministerial functions and government agencies could provide effective way to verify and validate the existence of the permitted entity. So the question remains, was the business decision to apply for a business company wrong, or an expensive and an expensive indulgence, and that it can be assessed from the point of view of misrepresented literacy versus adequate literacy, that there was a pretension of competence meant for put up for self-enrichment because it was used to defraud others, like some acts, words, and deeds can be construed as cruel acts or vulgarity or distasteful to the sense and sensibility of polite society. whatever it is that should be spoken of in plain words so as not to be confusing. So that's why clarity had to be the order of the day. And so that we can be given a chance to conform to what is best for the good of the community that I am a part of, practicing my profession, living my life, you know, being part of social circles. Or did I lose everything? Did I lose it all the moment I became a person of interest? These musings came during the low moments, actually. So that only, I had, there were 2 or 3 times that in frustration I had asked whether the only justice that I could get is the justice of the Lord to shelter me from harmful intent. So I guess it's a kind of a prayer, really. And the person who will not judge us when we open the deepest and the innermost bitter thoughts that we dare not share with another person. It's our Lord. And I am just so thankful that I can recall that now, because obviously some resolutions had already taken place. But the first person who will not judge us when we free ourselves from consuming negativity or toxic moments, like when we are exhausted. Oh no, that's a very deadly combination. When we are so exhausted and our mind keep on spewing, recalling the day's event, and from the perspective of our not meeting the goal that we had set. Oh my, it's so frustrating. But yes, so for now, this is yours truly, Christy. Hopefully this recording will not encounter trouble.